We have now the next panel discussion is on affordable electricity for all. Affordable electricity for all. It's a dream or you think something is achievable. So I have the great pleasure of inviting Mr. Pankaj Batra, Chairperson of Central Electricity Authority of the Government of India, Mr. Reji Kumar Pillai, always very powerful voice, always outspoken, and something which should be in the interest of India. Mr. Pillai is always talking about that. He's President of India Smart Grid Forum, and Mr. Wrigley, Mr. Malcolm Wrigley, country head of the French giant NG. If I may start with you, Mr. Pillai. We just concluded a session on natural gas, and we have, of course, extensive discussion. Many in the natural gas sector, and the same goes for coal and uranium and oil, and they say electricity is a product, it's not energy. So, all these talk of EVs, electric vehicles, and all that, this is fine, but electric car is a car. And ultimately, you need you need natural gas, you need coal, you need oil, you need uranium to produce electricity. So, and when you have energy, energy means not electricity, but oil and gas, uranium and all that, then once you have that, you make many products, including electricity. So what's the big deal? Why do you claim that electricity alone is energy, or is the main source of energy?
The primary question is it a product? Yes. And do you really need any of the fuel to make electricity? Yes and no, because solar don't need any of those fuels. It straight away comes from sun. Come to wind, come to ocean, the wave energy. That's a technology which is maturing fast in the last 3 years. So because of the material science again, we can put something which is floating, we can derive the energy from the wave. There are a host of other technologies which can also produce electricity. It can be also produced from coal, nuclear and other fuel sources, gas. The beauty of electricity is that it can be, it's the cleanest fuel at the user end, and it can be used for a variety of services like lighting, heating, cooling, and all your appliances which you have, which is driven today on electricity. An office or a home is not the same without electricity, although we have 40 million homes which are still not connected to the grid, but the life completely changes. So electricity is easy to produce from a variety of sources. It is easy to transport. Technologies are matured, and at the same time now we can store it also. Well, the batteries were there for a long time, but in commercial scale, batteries are available today, and several other energy storage technologies. For example, the flywheels which were developed for the space applications, which used to typically work for 15 minutes maximum. But last 3 years, developments in the power electronics can have a flywheel which runs up to 6 hours and gives me electricity at 50 hertz and constant voltage. Because even if the revolution per minute comes down from 3000 to 2000, the electronics will still fix it to give you electricity. So these are new developments which are happening.
Yeah, but why, one thing often people complain, but why can't electricity sector, the power sector, work in complete union with the gas sector, with the oil sector? And there seems to be very poor connect between the two, and very often the power sector, they don't understand that how difficult it is to produce natural gas, for the sake of, just to give you an example. And often power sector people, because they don't understand the gas sector, they say, oh, I want LNG, but I want at $2.7 per unit. And the LNG sector say, come on. And they say, oh, listen to me, I want it at burner. They say, oh, 2.7 at burner, impossible. Or they say, you are greedy. Or, so there seems to be kind of, why can't power sector, if you have to provide electricity to all, can work, together with the fuel sector, fossil fuels and others?
See, electricity is a regulated subject. Okay, the distribution is happening at a tariff which is decided by the regulatory commission. They are independent namesake, but otherwise So tariff is, so that's why yesterday also I commented, buy electricity at 5 rupees from the generating station and sell it at 3 rupees, they take a huge financial loss. As a result, distribution companies are not financially viable. So anyway, they have a peak time constraint, so they cannot give 100% electricity to all the demand. They do some 2 hours shutdown, cyclical load shedding. So that 2 hour become 4 hour, doesn't matter. So they resort to those things. But the main question which you asked, is it passed through? Only one state, Gujarat, where our Prime Minister, who was Chief Minister there, every quarter he allowed fuel surcharge to be passed on. So Gujarat never had a tariff shock. Other states for 3 years, 4 years, tariff remained the same. And it became unviable, then they have to increase it by 30%, 40%. Everybody is shouting. But in Gujarat, right from 2005 or 6 onwards, every quarter the fuel surcharge was passed on. So tariff goes by 3 paise, 4 paise, you don't even know. Last month I paid say 8 rupees 60 paise, this month it has become 63 paise, I don't even get to know. But over a quarter by quarter by quarter, the tariff goes up. So this was not done in any other state. That's why when you do a rating of the electricity distribution companies in the country, the last report was to be released in 2013 January. So PFC makes that. They found that there are only 4 distribution companies which are financially viable, which are in Gujarat. So they officially didn't even release that time. And the rating stopped. Otherwise, previous 10 years we used to do an official rating and give it, based on which banks used to determine the official interest rate for those people. Another very important point I like to mention here is that the tariff shock from the liquid, the variability of the fuel input is not there in wind and solar. A solar farm which is giving me at 2 rupee 43 paise is a constant rate for 25 years. There is no shocks. So from the volatility of the market, we are completely insulated. When that becomes a major input to the grid, things will be much better for the distribution companies.
Mr. Pankaj Batra, you are chairman of Central Electricity Authority. I mean, you are the main body of the government of India. I mean, it's upon you to make sure that electricity, affordable electricity is available to 1.30 billion people. It's more than the total population of Africa. Mr. Pillai talked about regulation. Various states have their own regulation and all that. People said that there should be reforms. That's good for you. There have been reforms and all that. But at the same time, what we find, even in Delhi, even where I live, and I look at my monthly electricity bill, it's just going up and up and up, and sometimes it's very difficult to explain why suddenly it has gone up. It seems that they make these days the way these people decide what should be the rate, what should be your bill is what part of Delhi you live in. If you live in South Delhi, the electricity bill is more, or if you live in good parts of Gurgaon, you need to pay more, things like that. I mean, affordable electricity, like you do in Germany, in Australia and all that, if you look at their income and the electricity bill, it's affordable. But in India, I mean, affordability has become a big issue. Now, it's kind of, are we daydreaming when we talk of affordable electricity for all, or you think that is something that the government and your organization is working on and we are moving in that direction?
Thank you. The very topic that is chosen is affordable electricity. So a question to Reggie about why we don't use gas is this. The gas, as you said, is expensive. I mean, not domestic gas. It's imported gas, which is expensive, RLNG, which has to be regasified. And the total cost comes out around 5 to 6 rupees per unit, only for fuel charge, besides the fixed charge which consumers have to pay. Whereas that from coal comes out to be, if it's a pithead station, less than 2 rupees per unit, the fuel charge, in addition to the fixed charge, which is around 150. So total 350. The one which of solar and wind comes out to be around 250, both through bidding that we've got for quite a lot of capacity, which is constant for 25 years, whereas gas and coal keeps on increasing because of the increasing fuel charge or the escalation which is there in respect of this fuel. That's primarily why we don't use gas for power stations other than domestic gas which is already available. Domestic gas is still affordable, but since it is linked to international prices, maybe in the future it may get more expensive. So, but there are solutions. We in CA try to see that we aim towards efficient systems as a whole. So not only generation, but also transmission and distribution. We have a app called Merit, which is on merit order dispatch, which tries to ensure that the state distribution companies procure the cheapest power first out of all the stack that they have to meet the demand. And we also try to plan for the future on what sort of generation mix we should have for the future. In that respect, we took out the National Electricity Plan, which is planning of generation planning for the future, right up to 2027, in accordance with the demand which is forecast. The demand is forecast to grow at about 6.18% CAGR for the next up till 2022, and about 5.4 or something for the next 5 years from 22 to 27. To meet this demand, we see which is the best way of meeting this demand, considering that we have intermittencies of renewable generation that we are going in India in a big way, solar and wind. And we have seen that gas which is a good thing to meet for peak, for peaking. So we also conducted an exercise for using gas station, combined cycle gas stations that we already have as a peaking station, which means it shuts down during the day, comes up only for the evening peak and shuts down again, which was done satisfactorily for Dadri on 27th of August. And we will be doing more also. There are no issues about variation of pressure in the gas pipeline, so we did it in collaboration with GAIL. The quantity of gas that we have, we want to use it optimally, the domestic gas. The imported gas is expensive, and therefore nobody wants to schedule that, none of the distribution companies. Now, when we talk about affordable electricity, we have, fortunately, prices of solar which are quite low, and there's a lot of research going on solar increasing efficiency of solar cells, increasing efficiency of wind generating inverters, and the wind design of the wind generator itself. So we hope that the electricity prices from these renewable sources will not rise. But how do you take care of the intermittencies that we have? We have the best sources that we already have is hydro and gas, which can meet that. Coal is not so quick in meeting the variations. The response time is not so quick, but coal can do it, do it gradually, and with some retrofitting, even existing coal stations can balance it. And this was the topic of a seminar which we were having jointly with NTPC about introducing flexibilization in coal-based plants. But the new thing which is coming is battery. Lithium-ion batteries prices have dropped 70% in the last 7 years, and I'm told in the last 1 year by 30% more. Because in Germany, there was a bid which was called for $160 per kWh now for setting up by 2020, and there were a lot of bidders for that. If that's the case, then we feel that by 2030, we'll have prices dropping to $100 per kWh. And we've done a study in CA about the optimal, the cheapest cost, the cheapest system cost. And we found that about 50 gigawatt hour of battery would be optimum for 2030, along with the others. There would be some rise in coal-based stations. Gas, of course, there is no rise shown because of the price of gas, international gas. So I don't foresee in India gas coming in a big way. Liquid is already too expensive, so it won't come. Coal would come to some extent to meet the base load, but I think we are going to get cheaper and cheaper electricity in future. But the question about having cheap electricity for consumers like us, this is a generic issue which we are trying to tackle in India. The industries cross-subsidize the agriculture, industries and commercial. So that's a generic issue which we are trying to see. It actually distorts some of the things. So what we've proposed and what is being discussed is that we have a common tariff for everyone, a consumer level, and if any subsidy is to be given, that should be direct subsidy into the accounts of the people who are underprivileged. And that one of the ways in how to fund that could be funding from the power sector alone, or it could be in general taxation. So these are some of the things we are seeing will reduce the price of power for industries and commercial, because that way we can also become competitive with the other industries around the world where we are at a disadvantage, because in many other countries the residential tariff is higher than the industrial tariff. So these are some of the steps that we are taking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I may come to you, Mr. Wrigley, you did talk about during your talk on cross subsidy. You just heard Mr. Batra and also Mr. Pillai. Mr. Batra also talked about supporting, or call it subsidy, call it by any name, for those who can't afford to pay better prices. Given some ground realities in India, we still have a lot of people who are not so privileged to make their full payments for electricity, buying electricity. So, but at the same time, electricity for all, and since you were in the morning talking about cross subsidies, so your take, please.
Yeah, I think the target for affordable electricity for all is very laudable. It's a good objective for the government to have, but clearly the system that's in the electricity market at the moment, which is fraught with cross-subsidy, which is causing the problems that I was talking about earlier. It's essential that you need to avoid subsidizing the cost of electricity to anybody. If you want to provide social support to families, don't do it through fundamental commodities like electricity. And there are other subsidies that exist as well, which distort other markets. And I'm thinking about food, I'm thinking about other primary energies. It's a big mistake. It's a big mistake to subsidize any commodity, because then it becomes embedded into the economy and it's extremely difficult to move it. If you want to provide social support to families, you really need to do it directly with direct payments to the family account, or some kind of other system, to avoid embedding a problem into the fundamental economics of markets, which problem will grow and only come worse in the future and come back to you. So in my view, it's essential. If you want to make affordable electricity for all, by all means make electricity connections to every family and every home, but make sure that the tariff for that electricity is a genuine cost-reflective commercial tariff. And if you believe there's a social need to support the family, then do it directly, not through the price of commodities.
Thank you. If I may come to you, Mr. Pillai, Mr. Batra talked about, solar, and the tariffs are going in the direction of south. Whatever the tariff or whatever the size, I'm being honest and candid here, but the fact is that bulk of the electricity produced using solar is just going to the grid. So basically it becomes part of the same system. And you don't know, when you're consuming electricity at home or in the industry, you don't know the nationality. You don't know the color, whether it's solar or nuclear and all that. While in a country like ours, where we still have a lot of people very, very poor access to electricity, if solar has to be a solution, we need to focus more on distributed. I know you are smart grid, So basically distributed, no grid. Or if smart grid, but at the level of, villages, clusters. That seems to be the solution, and where they are allowed to have their own regulations and their own economics, their own tariffs, and everything of their own. And maybe you can provide grid only to support them in seasons like monsoon, but otherwise they can be quite on their own. So what is the solution? If you really want people to, have electricity at rates they can afford, Mr. Wrigley talked about subsidies for those who are, using Aadhaar card or use some other method. But it seems that electricity is more complex than oil and gas because it's both concurrent subject, is the states involved with their own visions, with their own experiences, and Chief Minister getting and say, "Main bijli mufat dunga, I'll give electricity for free." So all that kind of highly politicized. So how should one really unclutter the clutter in order to make affordable electricity for all a possible thing?
A couple of key points like to bring to the knowledge of everybody. First of all, electricity is the cheapest if you can provide from a grid, even at the true cost. So, and the poor people, they spend a disproportionate percentage of their income for their energy needs. Even if a village home where there is no electricity, if he is buying a liter of kerosene for lighting, even that is as percentage of his income, it's much higher than what we pay for electricity as percentage of our income in cities. So they are willing to. If a distribution company have to charge 5 rupees a unit or 8 rupees a unit, even at that rate, people are willing to do that. There are villages in Bihar, Jharkhand, UP, many places, people cycle 10 kilometer, 20 kilometer to charge their phone overnight. They pay 10 rupees to charge the phone overnight in those places. And somebody else from the village go to collect it in the morning. So those people, if it is there, they are willing to pay that per unit of cost of energy. That should be understood. They don't need that subsidy, and it changes their life if there is electricity, at least the lifeline supply which we have been advocating, evening 4 to 6 hours of lifeline supply, that extend the day, that increases their income. There is water available in the village. Again, the experiment which was done in Gujarat in feeder segregation, one feeder which goes to the villages have 24/7 electricity, the one which goes to the agricultural field, there they have been given 8 hours of electricity for the agricultural purposes from 10 o'clock in the night to 6 o'clock in the morning. So the results from that experiment which Mr. Modi had done was that within 2 years of giving 24/7 electricity in the village, several things happened. One, house level, income level went up by 30%. Many economic factors which they assumed which happened. One thing, the dropout of female students from school came down by 85%, because they are the one to pull out from school to go to faraway place to fetch water. With electricity in the same village, there's a pump can be operated and there is water. So much of socio-economic changes happens with electricity, people are willing to pay. And at the micro level, we have been always advocating that the size in a place where there are 100 houses, it is too expensive for somebody to run a small mini grid or a micro grid. You bundle the services, water supply, electricity, house tax collection, internet services, all that, so that the volume of businesses comes to some size where you can use efficiency tools. You can deploy skilled manpower to maintain that. So those need to be, that's one of the main policy intervention which need to be there at the grassroots level. The newly electrified villages, many of them don't get electricity. Even if something goes wrong, there is no skilled person available to do that. But the question about the solar grids in the villages, there are already a few hundred rural microgrids which are there. Many of them came up through some subsidy or the other from the government. But with today's prices, 1 kilowatt of capacity, you get it for about 50 to 55,000 rupees. And in most part of India, in a day, 5 units of electricity it produces. So the price comes to less than 6 rupees, 5 rupees to 6 rupees. And maybe by 2 years down the line, that will go further down below 5 rupees from the rooftop systems which you can have. Slightly bigger scale, in a village scale, you go for a 25 kilowatt something, the price further comes down. So today, MNRE gives a subsidy of 30% for the rooftop people. Who are the people who are buying today rooftop? It's the middle class and upper middle class and businesses. They don't need actually that subsidy. And that subsidy should go to upgrade the grid, to absorb the intermittency of this solar. If you look at a daytime graph of solar, morning it goes like this, go to a peak by 2 o'clock and it comes down in the evening. But in 1 minute, if you look at it, there are spikes. And today the total solar generation in the grid is less than 5%. So it doesn't matter. My 95% coming from big power plant, it's able to smoothen it. But at the feeder level, when it goes to 20%, 30%, the power quality will be a major challenge. This LED bulbs and the screens will not work if going up and down. So a lot of investment need to happen at the distribution grid level, and the DISCOMs are already financially struggling. They don't have money to invest. That work we need to. If this 40,000 megawatt going to come from rooftop, which we already, I believe it will happen. A couple of months ago, we crossed 2,000 megawatt or 2 gigawatt from the rooftop. So which will go at a much faster rate because people find it economically attractive. If you consume electricity more than 500 unit, everybody is paying more than 8 rupees. So the rooftop is already less than 6 rupees. So people finding it attractive to do that. So there need to be policy intervention to facilitate this kind of mini grids coming in. And lastly, most important thing, the DC grid. We have already from BIS with our CA, we have finalized a 48 voltage standard for DC microgrid, which is good for most of our equipment. And they need, in a small village which is freshly getting electrified, they don't need even AC. DC is good. Most of the devices we use consume DC. Your phones, your laptop, your LED bulbs, and all this LCD panels, everything. And even brushless DC motors are there for fan. So a newly electrified village doesn't need AC at all. DC is good enough and 48 voltage is good, and that development is happening.
If I may come to you, Mr. Batra, if you look at some people say, I'm no expert on electricity, but some people say that the electricity sector in the country as a whole is suffering from serious issues, especially that when you look at the electricity sectors, they are kind of, roadblocks everywhere. And it looks like, all the nerves, like the nerves leading to the heart, most of these nerves are clogged. So the power sector needs a big angioplasty, if not just a surgery. So if that is the case, and if the state utilities, even some regulators and distributors, even the private sector distributors, all they are fine. But the question is that still, as long as we are not able to really go for a major policy intervention and a major recast of the whole thing, even if we have more surplus capacity in terms of power generation, even if we succeed in terms of solar power revolution, 30 to 40% Indians would not be the beneficiary of that, because the beneficiary would again be, even if the prices drop, the beneficiaries will be only the privileged 50% or the connected 50%. How do we, when we know the problems, when we know that, look, this is what it is, and we need to do something, what exactly is holding India back?
I think, yes, there are problems in the power sector. And if I can say one single thing that would reform the sector would be honest technical competence, which should be there to shape policies, to shape how things happen, which I'm afraid is not there. I mean, the decision makers are not people who are got the best technical competence. So this is something that will change the entire face of the power industry. Okay, now let's go to the problems that we have. We have things about, as I said, about policy, about removing cross subsidies and having direct subsidy. That's a thing which is There are also political compulsions, I think, and there is, but the point is that even if a policy is made by the government of India, there's a debate on whether it's mandatory or it's not. Because a policy is a direction you give. And since we have both state and central jurisdiction, whether the policies made by the central government are enforceable by the states or not. Now that's a major thing where even the Supreme Court has given a decision which we are not sure whether it is or it isn't. So policies will not change it, it's only the laws which will change it, but the laws cannot be very defining, they will be broad. So I think the thing is, as you say, a successful sector is not, or a person who's a successful man is not a person who does different things, but they do things differently. That's what one of the ex-management guru said also in the US. So that's the main problem I feel. It's not that there are no solutions to that. There are solutions to everything. In fact, a lot of it is to do with technical solutions. Smart grid is something which can do a lot. It can optimize a lot of things, and with a very small cost. So using information technology. So that's something which should be done. And of course, we in CA try to hold conferences and workshops for all the concerned stakeholders to see that these are done, or people are aware of the solutions that exist, and also try to make it simple so that also bring out cost-benefit analysis, business models to see that that it can be implemented at a small cost. I think that is the major thing. It's nothing which is insurmountable. Definitely it can be done.
Thank you. So on this optimistic note, we conclude this session. I think Mr. Batra and Mr. Pillai and Mr. Igli, many challenges, many issues, but I think there should be more regular kind of dialogues or formalized meetings or institutionalized meetings between the natural gas sector, the coal sector, power generators. I don't know how often Gail and you actually meet, or for that matter the private sector companies like Trukballians or ONGCs and others. I think because the important thing is to, at the end of the day, to make the power sector as efficient as possible, because I remember talking with a villager who got the power connection 24 hours ago in a small village near Shukohabad in Uttar Pradesh. So I asked this man, it's the first time the family has experienced one bulb, one electricity bulb. So I asked him, so how do you feel? He says, magic. You see, so this is, electricity is magic. He says, my life has changed. My view of life has changed. My vision of life, everything has changed with just one bulb. So many of us who are privileged and born in with these things, but take them for granted. But many of those in the world, and there are about 1.3 billion people without electricity in the world. And many of us, unfortunately, in our country or in the region that we live. So it's magic. So, and I think it can be done. It's possible. The only thing is, as I said, that because treatment of angioplasty is affordable. So why should we go for this angioplasty so that more people get the benefit of it? With these words, thank you very much.